So I was really proud of myself earlier. Charlie Kaufman's I'm Thinking of Ending Things is coming to Netflix, and I had it written down that it was coming October 4th. So I have been watching Charlie Kaufman films and decided that the last week of September I was gonna watch and review films that week. I was excited for it and proud of myself because a lot of times on this channel I kind of feel like I'm scrambling to post things at a time where it's relevant. I was proud of myself because I feel like I was finally ahead of schedule and had things done in advance that would cause me less stress later. Turns out that film actually comes out on September 4th. So here I am scrambling again. Hello everybody, welcome to Film Fireside. Charlie Kaufman has been a screenwriter that I have been studying recently in preparation for his new film coming to Netflix this Friday called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. So in preparation for that, I mentioned this kind of at the beginning of the video. My plan was I wanted to do a video of this movie he's done and do a review of this movie he's done and yada yada yada. So because I messed up the scheduling aspects of it, I decided to just kind of do one collective video where I just quickly review the main four ones I've been studying. Let's just do it. I think one thing I would like to point out before I get into a specific movie of his is just that, as for me, when it comes to quality of a movie, the things in my mind that make a good quality movie, in my mind, script is number one. Usually it's number one. In most cases, that's one of the things that's most important to me. So a lot of times with Charlie Kaufman films, I think the script is always just so beautifully well thought out. Now, I don't think Charlie Kaufman is my goal here is to mess with people's minds so they can I genuinely think he just tells the stories that are in his head. We've gotten some great films from it and a lot of underappreciated films from it. One of the films I didn't get to that won't be talked about here is Synecdoche, New York. I really wish I had gotten to that film before I did this, but I still haven't seen New Mutants and Bill and Ted Face the Music and other things I wanted to see. I may not get to, honestly, till this weekend just because life is crazy. So I'm already feeling, again. So Synecdoche, New York is kind of on the bottom of the list right now, especially since I'm Thinking of Ending Things is coming out this Friday. So if you want me to do a review of that one, I will. Just let me know in the comments and I'll probably watch it still. Maybe I'll do a quick little review of it. Okay, those are my thoughts on just Charlie Kaufman's style. So let's just dive right into the most recent one I watched. Adaptation is a very, very interesting concept. This is one of his films, I believe, that got nominated for Best Screenplay. I think. Yes, it did. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. Adaptation. Nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. Oh, you stink! In all seriousness, no, that's what this film is about. And this film is extremely unique. All of his films are extremely unique. And one of the things I love about Charlie Kaufman is he's consistently unique. So Adaptation, this is based more or less on a true story. Charlie Kaufman was tasked by his agent and others to make a film adaptation of a book called The Orchid Thief, written by Susan Orlean, who is a New York Times. No, she's not a New York Times. What is she? The New Yorker. That's what she's a writer for. My bad. And she wrote a book about John LaRoche, who is I guess what I gathered, a poacher of flowers. Kind of. I don't know any other way to explain it other than that. The funny thing about this is the actual Charlie Kaufman, when writing this, trying to adapt this book into a screenplay, experienced writer's block. So he wrote about his writer's block. That's what he wrote. And that's the movie we got from Adaptation. Literally a movie about him trying to adapt a book into a screenplay and the struggle that was for him. This is just a really honest film for the most part, you know what I mean? This is a very fictional story and he takes the fact that he's experiencing writer's block and tells a fictional story about it, but that's probably laced with a lot of truths about himself. Just this, again, this idea is really fascinating. And the other fun fact I read about this is Charlie Kaufman, again, was experiencing writer's block, came up with a script, which was a script about him experiencing writer's block. He said he submitted that and was like, this may ruin my career. But nope, got him an Oscar nomination for writing. So now that I've just spilled all the trivia that was on my mind, let me actually talk about the movie. This movie, again, it's very unique, takes something, I guess, very personal that Charlie Kaufman experiences, which I think he does with all his movies. But in this case, very, very personal to the point where I'm just going to write myself in as a character in this movie. And I think does the book justice, as well as creates an interesting, meaningful story and takes very strong liberties with the fictional approach of this film. I will say, I don't think one of my favorite things about Charlie Kaufman, people kind of accuse his movies of being weird, and as if that's a bad thing. I would say if that was a bad thing, if they were weird for the sake of being weird. I don't really find that that's the case with Charlie Kaufman. I will say, though, that the third act of this movie, where things take some twists and turns, while be it interesting and very, relevant, and I even think, appropriate for the story that they were telling and the direction his story was going, there was some weird choices made that didn't seem to serve anything. I think the overall structure, the chronological structure of this story is very interesting. Deciding to coincide telling Charlie Kaufman's story, trying to write this book, and also telling Susan Orlean's story, who is played beautifully by Meryl Streep, by the way. Her interaction with John LaRoche, who is also portrayed very well by John Cooper. Honestly, the acting in this film is superb. There are great performances from literally everybody. John LaRoche and Susan Orlean's story and their connection, them getting to know each other, is coinciding with Charlie Kaufman trying to write a screenplay. So it was ironic to me because at the same time, the story of how the book was written and the story of how the movie for the book was being told simultaneously, and the similarities, or at least I noticed some similarities. I don't know, maybe whether they were intentional or not, couldn't really tell, but I noticed some similarities that were really beautiful to me. My score of adaptation, honestly, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. On to the next one. Anomalisa, whoa, what an odd movie. I love animated films. I specifically love the stop-start animation. I think there's something very unique about that style, and I think it can accomplish, and this sounds weird because of how choppy it looks, but it accomplishes this sense of realism almost, which is very fascinating. Like I said, you wouldn't really think that of stop-start animation. The stop-start animation is done with marionettes, as well as some, I imagine, some claymation elements too with the marionettes. And that was a very intentional choice, not just to be cool and weird. Again, like I said earlier, Charlie Kaufman's choices have a reason other than, wouldn't it be weird if we did this? This floored me. This movie really floored me. I was really hooked by this story. It is very unique. And ironically, of all of Charlie Kaufman's films, this is one I was able to just kind of get right off the bat. At least for me, I was like, okay, I get it. I know. Most of Charlie Kaufman's films kind of leave you being like, what just happened? Which is good, because that causes you, again, to naturally gain an emotional response from the film, to consider the realities of the film, to consider how I related to the film. Forces me as an audience to do that, and a lot of people like that, but I also think a lot of people miss that. And this is one, too, that I actually didn't have to do much work as far as what did I just watch? It all was pretty cut and dry for me. It made perfect sense. The ending is really, I don't know, but again, I say straightforward, and you may be like, oh, good, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and it ends perfectly. Everything's wrapped up. It doesn't end like that, but I think for me, the story was much more about something else. At least for me, that's kind of my interpretation of this. One fun trivia I've learned is Jessie Buckley, who's going to play the lead in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, has stated that with Charlie Kaufman, she would read the script and reach out to him and be like, oh, I get it now. I think it's this, this, and this, and this. And he's like, great, that sounds awesome. And then she goes, then I'd read it again and go, oh no, that was stupid before. I totally missed it. It's actually this, and this, and this, and this. And he's like, wow, that's great. Good job. Charlie Kaufman is one that I really value this. He just puts his work out there and lets the truths that people have within themselves suck up the truths of his movies. And I think that's, well, first of all, that is true art right there. When you word it that way, it can sometimes sound like it's like, oh, well, he just kind of let people interpret it how they want. He didn't really put much work into it. No, I think he puts a lot of work into it and put all his heart and soul into it, but does it in a way that everyone else can at least appreciate and understand and even connect with to a certain degree. So if someone else takes his film, if I bring my personal experience into Anomalisa and get something else out of it than he intended, that's a win-win. You know what I mean? And I think Charlie Kaufman gets that. Anomalisa too, this is a really underrated film. I'm talking about this film right now and you're probably like, I've never even heard of this movie. I will just say, I don't really do content warnings, like verbal content warnings. I usually poke one up here. I will just say though, while I really like this movie, there is a very, very graphic sex scene. And it looks fake because it's stop-start animation and they're dolls. But I can see it being triggering for some people. So just take that for what it's worth. The beauty of Anomalisa is just the clever writing, and this was very much a character's journey. His journeys, his struggles are really, really beautiful. And again, I don't really want to tell you too much of the odd choices they make other than it's just stop-start animation, because I didn't know that going into it, and it made the movie so much better for me. So go watch Anomalisa. My score of Anomalisa, also, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. On to the next one. Being John Malkovich. Oh my golly. I had heard of this film before, but I had heard it was a comedy. And it is. It is a comedy. In fact, Charlie Kaufman's really good at comedy. There's comedic elements in all of his other films I'd failed to mention. Because honestly, the first 30 minutes of Anomalisa, I was like, this film is freaking hilarious. Being John Malkovich, again, it was billed to me as a comedy, and I didn't really know much about it. For those of you who don't know, Being John Malkovich is a movie about a group of people who find a portal into John Malkovich's mind where they can live in John Malkovich's body for I think it's 8 minutes or something at a time. This is one of the things about Charlie Kaufman that I really, really love. Because like I said earlier, I don't think he does anything to be like, hey, you know what'd be really weird? This would be a film that I could see college students who are high coming up with and being like, let's make this movie where I find a portal into John Malkovich's mind and I'm just there. That would be a disaster of a film. Charlie Kaufman is smarter than that. He may have taken some inspiration from weed, I don't know. But regardless, he wants to base that in realism. What's the actual reality of that? Why would people want to do that? Who are the types of people that would want to do that? Would inspire someone to want to do that? What would lead someone to a place where they would find that? And then how could we make a cohesive story around that? This is another film where the acting is just superb. It is really, really good. Cameron Diaz's best performance and John Cusack's best performance. I've read a fact before that for Breaking Bad, John Cusack was in talks to play Walter White, and because he was busy on other projects, it didn't happen, and that's why Bryan Cranston was able to get the role. And I've always thought to myself, if John Cusack played Walter White, that wouldn't have worked. That would have been awful. But honestly, after watching this, I didn't realize how good of an actor John Cusack was. Holy cow. He blew me away in this movie. He is so damn good in this movie. Cameron Diaz is in this movie and really, really killed it. Catherine Keener is in this film, and she, I think, won an Oscar for this film. But the performance I really want to talk about. Going into this film, I wouldn't have expected this, but the performance that's my favorite of this is John Malkovich's. I wouldn't have thought that going into a movie where he just has to be himself. But again, without spoiling it, there's a lot more to that. This applies to his other films. I just didn't mention it. I would say it heavily applies here. That this story, I guess it caused me to kind of question, what am I trying to say? I want to say identity is a topic or a theme of this. There are themes with adaptation and with Anomalisa, but this one seemed very, the theme was very apparent to me, and it helped me in my experience with this movie a lot. It's interesting too, again, through this idea of people trying to be John Malkovich. How do we do that in our own way? Does the world cause for me to need to do that? I don't know. There's a lot of things. Again, the theming of this is interesting. Identity is one that definitely comes up. And there is a lot to talk about that, but I would then be getting into more spoilers. So to avoid spoilers, I will just say there's a very apparent theme here, and it serves the story very, very well, and I like it a lot. My score of Being John Malkovich, 9 out of 10. Wow. On to the next one. Last but definitely not least, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet are electric in this film. Their chemistry is just fascinating. It's so beautiful. Their relationship is so real and so hard and beautiful to watch at the same time. Oh my gosh. And I loved this idea. The question is, if I had the option to forget a past relationship, what would that actually look like? What would that actually look like? And how would that actually feel? Who are the types of people who would come up with this idea? Who are the types of people that would want to do that? And why would they want to do that? His work is solely and strictly based on characters. And it's awesome. That's why, again, that's why all of his movies are so great, because the script is just so solid. The characters in this film are extremely well done, and this story is amazing. It's an amazing story, and I would say underrated, but I think a lot of people hold this film in very high regards. This won Best Screenplay, so there isn't much to say about this that hasn't been said by others. You know, a lot of interpretations are taken from this movie, but the film is all wrapped up in the last literally 5 seconds of the movie. In fact, he does that a lot. Anomalisa kind of does the same thing, where all this weird stuff happens and it's all wrapped up packed up neat and tight and goes, oh, that was it. In literally like 5 seconds. And that's beautiful, I think. I think that's effective. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, watching the second time, it really hit me. Watching the first time, I think I was a little distracted by the weirdness of it and the cool editing and cinematography. Those things were awe-inspiring to me, and I was awestruck by those things. Watching it a second time really helped me grasp this film in a very new, real, and beautiful way. And this film, I give it a 10 out of 10. If you haven't seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that is the one I recommend most out of these movies. This movie is beautiful. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, I didn't want to spoil his films. Maybe I said the same thing more or less about all 4 movies, because that is kind of the same. They are essentially. I feel similarly about all 4 to a certain extent. Go watch I'm Thinking of Ending Things, coming out this Friday. I'm going to try and post a review about it Friday morning. I'm honestly more excited for that than I am Mulan. Have you seen any of these films on this list? What are your thoughts on these films? Do you disagree with me? Are there any of these films that you don't like as much as I do? Because I gave all these films really high scores. Are there other Charlie Kaufman things that I haven't seen that you think I should see? Comment below, start a discussion with me. While you're here, go ahead and give this video a like, because it does nothing but support the channel, and I really appreciate it when you do. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on reviews coming soon. Thank you so much for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. Bye-bye.